but it sounds like a little bit of something.
Radiant beach and a cool jeweled moon. Couples naked race down by its quiet side, and we laugh like soft, mad children, smug in the woolly cotton brains of infancy. The music and voices are all around us. Choose, they croon, the ancient ones, the time has come again. Choose now, they croon, beneath the moon, beside an ancient lake. Enter again the sweet forest. Enter the hot dream, come with us. Everything is broken up and dances. Moonshine night, mountain village, insane in the woods and the deep trees. Under the moon, beneath the stars, they reel and dance, the young folk, led to the lake by a king and queen. Oh, I want to be there, I want us to be there, beside the lake, beneath the moon, cool and swollen, dripping its hot liquor.
It's my first novel. I want to write a...
Are you a novelist? You're a filmmaker? I guess it doesn't make any difference. You're just a creative entity.
Yeah. I just work a lot, and I wanted to write the Great American Novel, or a novel. I just wanted it to be American. I wanted.
Here's the book. How long did it take you to write this book?
Probably, I think over like a 2-year span, 2 or 3 years.
Now here I turn to page 59. We got it clipped off here, and all I see on page 59 is the word heparin.
Oh yeah, that was going to be the first page, because I wanted to write a book with just one word, and but it ended up being a page of something like 67.
How much does this thing go for? How many? What are we talking about?
I think it's a regular book price. I don't know. I don't like to. I can't imagine why anyone would buy a book nowadays.
Yeah. Would you buy this book? Would you recommend people go out and buy it or not?
I'd probably read an older book.
Is this? Are you happy with this book, or you're not happy?
Oh, I like it.
You couldn't recommend it though.
I'm the author, so it's hard. I just don't really like to. I wouldn't endorse it or anything.
concrete highway was edged with a mat of tangled, broken, dry grass, and the grass heads were heavy with oat beards to catch on a dog's coat, and foxtails to tangle in a horse's fedlocks, and clover burrs to fasten in sheep's wool. Sleeping life waiting to be spread and dispersed, every seed armed with an appliance of dispersal, twisting darts and parachutes for the wind, little spears and balls of tiny thorns, and all waiting for animals and for the wind, for a man's trouser cuff or the hem of a woman's skirt, all passive but armed with appliances of activity, still but each possessed of the anlage of movement. The sun lay on the grass and warmed it, and in the shade under the grass the insects moved, ants and antlions to set traps for them, grasshoppers to jump into the air and flick their yellow wings for a second, sow bugs like armadillos, plodding restlessly on many tender feet. And over the grass at the roadside a land turtle crawled, turning aside for nothing, dragging his high-domed shell over the grass. His hard legs and yellow-nailed feet threshed slowly through the grass, not really walking, but boosting and dragging his shell along. The barley beards slid off his shell, and the clover burrs fell on him and rolled to the ground. His horny beak was partly open, and his fierce, humorous eyes, under brows like fingernails, stared straight ahead. He came over the grass, leaving a beaten trail behind him, and the hill, which was the highway embankment, reared up ahead of him. For a moment he stopped, his head held high. He blinked and looked up and down. At last he started to climb the embankment. Front clawed feet reached forward, but did not touch. The hind feet kicked his shell along, and it scraped on the grass and on the gravel. As the embankment grew steeper and steeper, the more frantic were the efforts of the land turtle. Pushing hind legs strained and slipped, boosting the shell along, and the horny head protruded as far as the neck could stretch. Little by little, the shell slid up the embankment until at last a parapet cut straight across its line of march, the shoulder of the road, a concrete wall 4 inches high. As though they worked independently, the hind legs pushed the shell against the wall. The head upraised and peered over the wall to the broad, smooth plain of cement. Now the hands, braced on top of the wall, strained and lifted, and the shell came slowly up and rested its front end on the wall. For a moment the turtle rested. A red ant ran into the shell, into the soft skin inside the shell, and suddenly head and legs snapped in, and the armored tail clamped in sideways. The red ant was crushed between body and legs, and one head of wild oats was clamped into the shell by a front leg. For a long moment the turtle lay still, and then the neck crept out, and the old humorous frowning eyes looked about, and the legs and tail came out. The back legs went to work, straining like elephant legs, and the shell tipped to an angle so that the front legs could not reach the level cement plane, but higher and higher the hind legs boosted it, until at last the center of balance was reached, and the front tipped down. The front legs scratched at the pavement, and it was up. But the head of wild oats was held by its stem around the front legs. Now the going was easy, and all the legs worked, and the shell boosted along, waggling from side to side. A sedan driven by a 40-year-old woman approached. She saw the turtle and swung to the right, off the highway. The wheels screamed and a cloud of dust boiled up. 2 wheels lifted for a moment and then settled. The car skidded back onto the road and went on, but more slowly. The turtle had jerked into its shell, but now it hurried on, for the highway was burning hot. And now a light truck approached, and as it came near, the driver saw the turtle and swerved to hit it. His front wheel struck the edge of the shell, flipped the turtle like a tiddlywink, spun it like a coin, and rolled it off the highway. The truck went back to its course along the right side. Lying on its back, the turtle was tight in its shell for a long time. But at last its legs waved in the air, reaching for something to pull it over. Its front foot caught a piece of quartz, and little by little, the shell pulled over and flopped upright. The wild oat head fell out, and 3 of the spearhead seeds stuck in the ground. And as the turtle crawled on down the embankment, its shell dragged dirt over the seeds. The turtle entered a dust road and jerked itself along, drawing a wavy, shallow trench in the dust with its shell. The old humorous eyes looked ahead, and the horny beak opened a little. His yellow toenail slipped a fraction in the dust.
child said, "What is grass?" fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition, out of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift in remembrancer, designedly dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners, that we may see and remark and say, whose? Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. Or I guess it is a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white. Cannock, Tuckahoe, Congressman Cove, I give them the same, I receive them the same. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. Tenderly will I use you, curling grass. It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. It may be if I had known them, I would have loved them. It may be you are from old people, or from offspring taken soon out of their mother's laps. And here you are, the mother's laps. This grass is very dark to be from the white heads of old mothers, darker than the colorless beards of old men, dark to come from under the fake red roofs of mouths. Oh, I perceive, after all, so many uttering tongues, and I perceive that they do not come from the roofs of mouths for nothing. I wish I could translate the hints about the dead young men and women, and the hints about old men and mothers, and the offspring taken too soon out of their laps. What do you think have become of the young and old men? What do you think have become of the women and children? They are alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows that there is really no death. And if ever there was, it led forward life, and it does not wait at the end to arrest it, and ceased the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward, nothing collapses, and to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier. I believe a leaf of grass is no less than a journey work of the stars. I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them long and long. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. Not one is dissatisfied, not one is demented with the mania of owning things. Not one kneels to another, nor to his kind that lived thousands of years ago. Not one is respectable or unhappy over the earth.
Sky people coming down out the clouds, land. Then walking into society, try to find out what's happening. What's happening, they be saying. Look at it, where they been, dabbling in mist, appearing and disappearing. Now there's a real world breathing, inhaling, exhaling, concrete and sand. And they want to know what's happening. What's happening is life itself, onward and upward. The spirals of fire, conflict, clash of opposing forces. The dialogue of yes and no showed itself in stabbed children in the hallways of schools. Old men strangling bank guards, or hard Puerto Rican inmates' tears exchanging goodbyes in the prison doorway. Armies sweeping wave after wave to contest the ancient rule of the minority. What draws them down? Their blood entangled with humans, their memories, perhaps of the earth and what they thought it could be. But blinded by sun and their own images of things rather than things as they actually are, they wobble, they stumble sometimes. And people, they be cheering a lot because they think the sky people dancing. Yeah, get on it. People grinning and feeling good because the sky people dancing and the sky people stumbling. Till they get the sun out their eyes and integrate the in-head movie show with the material reality that exists with and without them. There are tragedies, though. A bunch of skies bought the loop-de-loop program from the elegant babble of the ancient minorities, which is where they loop-de-loop in the sky, right on, just loop-de-loop, loop-de-loop in fantastic, meaningless curlicues which delight the thin gallery owners who wave at them on their way to getting stabbed in the front seats of their silver Alfa Romeos by lumpen they have gotten passionate with. And the loop-de-loopers go on, sometimes spelling out complex primitive slogans and shooting symbolic smoke out their gills in honor of something dead. And then they'll make daring dives right down toward the earth and scag cocaine money white out and crunch iced into the statue graveyard where Ralph Ellison sits biting his banjo strings, retightening his instrument for the millionth time before playing the Star-Spangled Banjo. Or else Loop-de-loop, loop-de-loop, up higher and thinner, finer, refiner. Sugar laddies in the last days of the locust, sucking their Greek lollipops. Such intellectuals as we is, baby. We need to deal in the real world and BBB in the real world. We need to use all the skills, all the spills and thrills that we conjure, that we construct, that we lay out and put together to create life as beautiful as we thought it could be, as we dreamed it could be, as we desired it to be, as we knew it could be before we took off, before we split for the sky side. Not to settle for endless, meaningless circles of celebration of this madness, this madness. Not to settle for this madness, these yo-yos of the ancient minorities. It's all for real. Everything's for real. Be for real. That's the song of the sky tribe walking the earth. Faint smiles to open roars of joy. Meet you on the battlefield, they say. They be humming, hop, then stride. Faint smile to roars of open joy. Hey, my man, what's happening? Meet you on the battlefield, they say. Meet you on the battlefield, they say. What I guess needs to be discussed here tonight is what side y'all gonna be on.
Isidore made his way down the echoing, empty hall to the stairs. The potent, strong fragrance of happiness still bloomed in him. The sense of being, for the first time in his dull life, useful. He entered Pris's former apartment. The silence all at once penetrated. You have to be with other people, he thought, in order to live at all.
Grace Strasser Mundana, née Tabor, and I have been for 50 of my 60 years a student of delusion, a prudent traveler from Denver, Colorado. My mother died of influenza one morning when I was 8. My father died of gunshot wounds, not self-inflicted, one afternoon when I was 10. From that afternoon until my 16th birthday, I lived alone in our suite at the Brown Palace Hotel. I have lived in equatorial America since 1935 and only twice had fever. I am an anthropologist who lost faith in her own method, who stopped believing that observable activity defined anthropos. I studied under Kroeber at California and worked with Levi Strauss at Sao Paulo, classified several societies, cataloged their rites and attitudes on occasions of birth, copulation, initiation, and death, did extensive and well-regarded studies on the rearing of female children in the Mato Grosso and along certain tributaries of the Rio Zingo, and still I did not know why any one of those female children did or did not do anything at all. Let me go further. I did not know why I did or did not do anything at all.
The next number we're going to do is Natural Death, and it was inspired by all the refugees who started to come over. Well, we're all refugees, but everybody started adopting Vietnamese orphans. So it made me think about some things, because I thought it was kind of weird, sort of like passing your guilt on to a baby. So this is the song. Refugees come to America to live in their dream. Gold lame jumpsuits and rhinestone cloaks.
You can't judge an orphan by the length of his.
Oh, the grandeur of it. Refugees paint mustaches on their faces. Refugees wear yellow satin dresses. Eating star-spangled sandwiches in the Saturday night parade. And bodies are buried in saran wrap on the beach. Fragile blossoms wither on beds in Southern California heat. The refugee is kidnapped by mysterious forces, while guilt-ridden liberals pray in cathedrals in the darkness of Riviera sunglasses, calling out to God when the refugee is revealed as, oh, the grandeur of it. Mysterious forces and telephone calls from anxious mothers in the Milky Way, warning all orphans to beware. Beware. Beware of nightclubs. Beware of Vietnamese mamas. Beware of the street. Beware of doorbells and abortions. Beware of pregnancy. Beware of public transportation. Beware of frozen meat. Beware of fresh meat. Strange men and rabid memories. Strange smells. Strange sounds. Strange feelings. Strange feelings. Beware of loneliness. Beware of loneliness. Beware of loneliness. And the rhythm of your heartbeat.
She sang beyond the genius of the sea. The water never formed to mind or voice, like a body, holy body, fluttering its empty sleeves. And yet its mimic motion made constant cry, caused constantly a cry that was not ours, although we understood, inhuman of the veritable ocean. The sea was not a mask, no more was she. The song and water were not medleyed sound, even if what she sang was what she heard. Since what she sang was uttered word by word, it may be that in all her phrases stirred the grinding water and the gasping wind, but it was she, and not the sea, we heard. For she was the maker of the song she sang. The ever-hooded, tragic, gestured sea was merely a place by which she walked to sing. Whose spirit is this, we said, because we knew it was the spirit that we sought and knew that we should ask this often as she sang. If it was only the dark voice of the sea that rose, or even colored by many waves, if it was only the outer voice of sky and cloud, of the sunken coral water-walled, however clear it would have been deep air, the heaving speech of air, a summer sound, repeated in a summer without end and sound alone. But it was more than that, more even than her voice and ours among the meaningless plungings of water and the wind, theatrical distances, bronze shadows heaped on high horizons, mountainous atmospheres of sky and sea. It was her voice that made the sky acutest at its vanishing. She measured to the hour its solitude. She was the single artificer of the world in which she sang. And when she sang, the sea, whatever self it had, became the self that was her song, for she was the maker. Then we, as we beheld her striding there alone, knew that there never was a world for her, except the one she sang and singing made. Ramon Fernandez, tell me if you know, why when the singing ended and we turned toward the town, tell why the glassy lights, the lights in the fishing boats at anchor there, as night descended, tilting in the air, mastered the night and portioned out the sea, fixing emblazoned zones and fiery poles, arranging, deepening, enchanting night. O blessed rage for order, pale Ramon, the maker's rage to order words of the sea, words of the fragrant portals, dimly starred, and of ourselves and of our origins, in ghostlier demarcations, keener sounds.
Dear Hume, you ask advice. What a very human and very dangerous thing to do. For to give advice to a man who asks what to do with his life implies something very close to egomania. To presume to point a man to the right and ultimate goal, to point with a trembling finger in the right direction, is something only a fool would take upon himself. But I am not a fool, but I respect your sincerity in asking my advice. I ask you, though, in listening to what I say, to remember that all advice can only be a product of the man who gives it. What is truth to one may be disaster to another. I do not see life through your eyes, nor you through mine. If I were to attempt to give you specific advice, it would be too much like the blind leading the blind. To be or not to be, that is the question. whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles. Shakespeare. And indeed, that is the question, whether to float with the tide or to swim for a goal. It is a choice we must all make consciously or unconsciously at one time in our lives. So few people understand this. Think of any decision you've ever made which had a bearing on your future. I may be wrong, but I don't see how it could have been anything but a choice, however indirect, between the two things I've mentioned, the floating or the swimming. But why not float if you have no goal? That is another question. It is unquestionably better to enjoy the floating than to swim in uncertainty. So how does a man find a goal? Not a castle in the stars, but a real and tangible thing. How can a man be sure he's not after the big rock candy mountain, the enticing sugar candy goal that has little taste and no substance? The answer, and in a sense the tragedy of life, is that we seek to understand the goal and not the man. We set up a goal which demands of us certain things, and we do these things. We adjust to the demands of a concept which cannot be valid. When you were young, let us say you wanted to be a fireman. I feel reasonably safe in saying that you no longer want to be a fireman. Why? Because your perspective has changed. It's not the fireman who has changed, but you. Every man is the sum total of his reactions to experience. As your experiences differ and multiply, you become a different man, and hence your perspective changes. This goes on and on. Every reaction is a learning process. Every significant experience alters your perspective. So it would seem foolish, would it not, to adjust our lives to the demands of a goal we see from a different angle every day? How could we ever hope to accomplish anything other than galloping neurosis? The answer, then, must not deal with goals at all, or not with tangible goals, anyway. It would take reams of paper to develop this subject to fulfillment. God only knows how many books have been written on the meaning of man and that sort of thing, and God only knows how many people have pondered the subject. I use the term God only knows purely as an expression. There's very little sense in my trying to give it up to you in the proverbial nutshell, because I'm the first to admit my absolute lack of qualifications for reducing the meaning of life to one or two paragraphs. I'm going to steer clear of the word existentialism, but you might as well keep it in mind as a key of sorts. You might also try something called Being and Nothingness by Jean-Paul Sartre, and another little thing called Existentialism from Dostoevsky to Sartre. These are merely suggestions. If you're genuinely satisfied with what you are and what you're doing, then give these books a wide berth. Let sleeping dogs lie. But back to the answer. As I said, to put our faith in tangible goals would seem to be, at best, unwise. So we do not strive to be firemen, we do not strive to be bankers, nor policemen, nor doctors. We strive to be ourselves. But don't misunderstand me. I don't mean that we can't be firemen, bankers, or doctors, but that we must make the goal conform to the individual, rather than make the individual conform to the goal. In every man, heredity and environment have combined to produce a creature of certain abilities and desires, including a deeply ingrained need to function in such a way that his life will be meaningful. A man has to be something. He has to matter. As I see it then, the formula runs something like this. A man must choose a path which will let his abilities function at maximum efficiency toward the gratification of his desires. In doing so, he is fulfilling a need, giving himself identity by functioning in a set pattern toward a set goal. He avoids frustrating his potential, choosing a path which puts no limit on his self-development, and he avoids the terror of seeing his goal wilt or lose its charm as he draws closer to it. Rather than bending himself to meet the demands of that which he seeks, he has bent his goal to conform to his own abilities and his own desires. In short, he has not dedicated his life to reaching a predefined goal, but he has rather chosen a way of life he knows he will enjoy. The goal is absolutely secondary. It is the functioning toward the goal which is important. And it seems almost ridiculous to say that a man must function in a pattern of his own choosing. For to let another man define your goals is to give up one of the most meaningful aspects of life, the definitive act of will which makes a man an individual. Let's assume that you think you have a choice of 8 paths to follow, all predefined paths, of course. And let's assume that you can't see any real purpose in any of the 8. Then, and here's the essence of all that I've said, you must find a 9th path. Naturally, it isn't as easy as it sounds. You've lived a relatively narrow life, a vertical rather than horizontal existence. So it isn't any too difficult to understand why you seem to feel the way you do. But a man who procrastinates in his choosing will inevitably have his choice made for him by circumstance. So if you now number yourself among the disenchanted, then you have no choice but to accept things as they are, or to seriously seek something else. But beware of looking for goals. Look for a way of life. Decide how you want to live, and then see what you can do to make a living within that way of life. But you say, I don't know where to look. I don't know what to look for. And there's the crux. Is it worth giving up what I have to look for, something better? I don't know, is it? Who can make that decision for you? But even by deciding to look, you go a long way toward making the choice. If I don't call this to a halt, I'm gonna find myself writing a book. I hope it's not as confusing as it looks at first glance. Keep in mind, of course, this is my way of looking at things. I happen to think that it's pretty generally applicable, but you may not. Each of us has to create our own credo. This merely happens to be mine. If any part of it doesn't seem to make sense, by all means call it to my attention. I'm not trying to send you out on the road in search of Valhalla, but merely pointing out that it's not necessary to accept the choices handed down to you by life, as you know. There is more to it than that. No one has to do something he doesn't want to do for the rest of his life. But then again, if that's what you wind up doing, by all means convince yourself that you had to do it. You'll have lots of company. And that's it for now. Until I hear from you again, I remain your friend, Hunter.